I met Roseanne last year in Silver City at the New Mexico Historical Society conference, and we had the opportunity to talk about plans for this gathering here while we were in Riverside, California, where she is a doctoral candidate at the University of Riverside. I also wish to welcome Roseanne's cousin, Jenny Merrill, who is joining us today from Las Vegas, Nevada. In his book, Looking to the Mountain, Santa Clara Pueblo scholar, Dr. Greg Cajete, reminds us that the land ethic of indigenous peoples of this bioregion lived by the concept of looking to the mountain, living in relationship with this land in a sustainable way that extends generations beyond us. Dr. Greg Cajete writes, quote, "Indigenous education at its innermost core is education about life and nature, of the spirit that moves us. Spirituality evolves from exploring and coming to know and experience the nature of the living energy moving in each of us, through us, and around us." End quote. In 1948, Aldo Leopold published his landmark essay, Thinking Like a Mountain, decades after living and working throughout New Mexico in the 1920s. I would like to honor and recognize the indigenous peoples who inspired Aldo Leopold and had lived by that land ethic of looking to the mountain for thousands of years. We are celebrating the indigenous kinship ties and land ethics of the indigenous peoples of this land today. And now I wish to turn over the Zoom meeting to my friend and colleague, Janice Lucero, from the Isleta Pueblo, who will introduce Roseanne and be facilitating our discussion today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Janice Lucero. I'm from the Pueblo of Isleta. I own and operate Cotton Blossom Gardens, a small farm in Isleta Pueblo. I'm happy to be facilitating today's Gila Wilderness series, and I'm honored to introduce our guest, Roseanne Rosenthal. All right.
Hi, Janice. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Roseanne. I'm going to do your quick introduction.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen. I want to start with a land acknowledgement.
Roseanne, she's going to introduce you real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, it's okay. We are honored to welcome Roseanne Rosenthal, an Apache non-traditional student whose journey embodies resilience and dedication. After decades of navigating the complexities of the U.S. healthcare system as a nurse, Roseanne returned to academia, driven by a desire to address challenges, with certifications in forensic nursing and crime scene investigation from the University of California, Riverside. Her expertise spans various facets of healthcare delivery. Roseanne's research explores the profound intersections and integrational trauma, particularly focusing on the implications of the Native American Graves Protection Act and the Indian Child Welfare Act. Through her comparative studies on Indian healthcare services, she seeks to eliminate both successful models and areas in need of improvement. Born and raised in South Carolina, Roseanne's commitment to community service extends globally, from volunteering with the Riverside Area Rape Crisis Center to providing healthcare in remote communities. At UC Riverside, she's a driving force behind initiatives like the Native American Honor Society and the Indigenized UCR Project, embodying leadership and advocacy. As a mentor and an advocate for Native American students, Roseanne's impact transcends academia, offering invaluable guidance drawn from her wealth of life experiences. Let us extend a warm welcome to Roseanne as she shares her profound insights into the healing potential of land and its role as a form of medicine. Thank you so much, Roseanne. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, Janice. Bear with me, I'm having little technical difficulties with the Wi-Fi, but if I drop off, I'll jump on again. So thank you so much for that introduction. I wanted to start off with a land acknowledgement. It is vitally important that we acknowledge the land on which we sit and the historical stewards of the land. The original peoples of New Mexico, Pueblo, Navajo, and Apache, since time immemorial, have deep connections to the land and have made significant contributions to a broader community statewide. I honor the land itself and those who remain stewards of this land throughout the generations, and I'm so honored to be a guest on this land. So today I'll be talking about land as medicine. As Janice kind of gave you an intro, I am Native American, Chiricahua and Tewa. My people are actually from New Mexico. My grandpa grew up in a little town called Tortugas right next to Las Cruces. So we're very familiar with this area of the land and we're very connected. So I'll kind of talk about that as we go along. So what exactly is the meaning of land as medicine? A lot of people, it would depend on who you ask on how you're going to get, what response you're going to get, right? Depends on if that's a person that's indigenous, Native American, non-Native American, indigenous to other parts of the world, right? It just depends. There's so many variations of this definition. But I'm going to start with mental health. And this is something that I study a lot. It is, and it's very, very important and instrumental in Native American cultures and communities. I know that a lot of people have heard that, this is an issue that happens that also impacts our physical health. Certainly our youth, we have a lot of problems in this area. And I'm going to bring it around to circle back to show you and explain to you the relationship between mental health, physical health, and land being our medicine. So first I want to basically go over, we have different definitions and terms. One of them is historical trauma. And if you've heard that before, that's kind of an old term. The reason it's an old term now is because when we, reference what happened in the past, we're not relating it to trauma that's still ongoing. So that term has changed to intergenerational trauma or generational trauma. The historical trauma definition is the psychological effects of forced relocation, assimilation, and other traumas inflicted on indigenous peoples that linger on today. Indigenous peoples are confronting the trauma, learning in the accurate history, and reconnecting with indigenous spiritual practices and culture to assist the healing journey, but continuing discrimination and ongoing trauma hinder that progress. And again, I will circle back to talk about the land and how that is actually helping to heal these communities. Intergenerational trauma, on the other hand, is the intergenerational and unconscious grief from the historical trauma, as I explained before, experienced by Indigenous peoples, is passed from generation to generation due to forced relocation, land dispositions, and loss of spiritual practices, language, and culture. If not addressed, stress disorder and substance use can be outward manifestations of this intergenerational trauma and unresolved historical grief.
Excuse me, Roseanne?
Yes.
Maybe if you blank out your screen, your Wi-Fi might be a little more stable because we're getting a little bit of interference. So maybe
if I do what?
If we kind of lose your voice, maybe blank out
Turn
your
off your video.
screen.
Sure, I'll do that.
I'm sorry. It's been kind of checking out a little bit.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'm still
That
getting
looks
it.
better. Thank you.
it's kind of odd because I hear you coming in and out. So Native American health issues, the importance of land and its impact on Native American health. So I would like to share with you these statistics, which were taken back in 2010, but have gotten progressively worse since then, and increased numbers of all these incidences, such as heart disease. As you can see, the first column is all, all different, the whole general. And then also, then the next column is R, or Native American stats. And then you have the ratios. So basically, if we look at heart disease, and if we look at cancer, you can see that it's a lot higher in the Native American communities than it is in the general public. One thing that I would like to focus on is diabetes. If you're aware of Native American communities, we see this, and the biggest example and evidence that this is a huge problem is if you go to casinos, in the bathrooms, you'll see a lot of the sharps containers that are used for the needles for the diabetic insulin. And so with that, when I'm talking about that as a medical issue, again, we're going to circle back to how the land impacts that and how that can help with these situations. So land is medicine. Is it ethnobotany? Or is it agriculture and food sources? Is it a biosystem? Is it just medicinal plants? It's actually all of those together and many more. And again, it's going back to, if I were to ask somebody, what does land as medicine mean? It would be different responses. So first of all, we're going to talk about indigenous agriculture and its impact. And usually we can start there because that actually was the beginning of our legacy right here in the United States, and how we cultivated our food, and basically how we survived in ancient times. So we're talking about indigenous agriculture that is so diverse. As you can see up at the top, there's the three sisters. We have the corn, we have the squash, and we have the beans. And those together in the body, as probably many of you know, actually create protein. During the times that the native tribes were low in meat because of the herds that moved around, and if they're during the winter time, this is what the women actually used to harvest to keep their tribes going. It also, if you look at it actually, the land and growing those three things together kind of recirculate and heal and revitalize the soil for it to keep growing as a crop. The food systems, early it was hunter and gatherers, and then we went into the agriculture that was supported by, as the human became more robust, there was many more of us, so we had to develop all these types of agricultural ways and technology. So that's kind of how it was going at that point, or how it evolved. And then now we come to the current, which kind of has shifted a bit, or a lot actually, and which is causing a lot of these issues, not only physical, but mental health as well. Usually we call going back to the land, not only in agriculture, but we call this good medicine. And within this good medicine group is ceremony, spirituality, and land reclamation. So talk about ceremony first. We use a lot of things that come from the land, such as sage to smudge, to get rid of bad energy or anything, to give us a positive more of a strength to go forward and conquer whatever task we're looking at. In my university, we do that a lot, especially for the students that are going to defend their dissertation, or if they're kind of confused or thinking about what school they're going to be going into for a grad program. We do this kind of smudging for clarity, for us to have a little bit more of a clearer vision as to what we need to do. Spirituality still follows in that same category. Now we're looking at, we introduced the tobacco. We give thanks to Creator. This is type of spirituality that we use that comes from the land. We also look to the four directions as we're standing on this land. And of course, the east, south, west, and north, to kind of get that spirituality base. So for our land reclamation, we started a project at the University of California, Riverside, because this land was actually donated by a Cahuilla man, a Native American man of a tribe that is there local. He donated this land for the university with the agreement that this university would service all the people, the populations that normally wouldn't get a chance to go to a university. But as time went on, we really have forgotten where or who was the one that gave this land and where our school actually was created from. So having that, being disconnected from that, we no longer had any evidence of any native language, of any native plants, of any native recognition whatsoever. We started this project, and it was actually undergrads and graduate students that came together, and we designated certain areas of the campus where we have markers that have the actual different tribal names for whatever area that was. So for instance, I worked on the anthropology department. We had a lot of herbs and plant growth in this one area called the herb garden, that we have a placket that actually is, in the language of Cahuilla. So we went through all of the campus and started, to identify these different areas, this land, and identify it back to the Cahuilla. This was definitely a way to bring back to indigenize this school once again, and that actually prompted for the administrators to designate one whole dormitory building, and that is named after some Cahuilla and tribal leaders and others that made such an impact and contribution to that school. So our community, because if you remember back when I was talking about the statistics, we have such a high statistics of diabetes. We have a lot of elders that we're losing because of these heart disease and diabetic conditions. So at University of Riverside, what we decided to do was we were also identifying that there was such a disconnect between the youth and also the elders. So we put together a program where we would get the elders to start a garden. The garden that was, filled with the traditional foods that they knew about, they grew up with, but are no longer there. And then we would partner them up with the youth, and they would start talking to the youth, teaching them, and also talking to them in their language. So we were actually able to conquer some of the issues that we were having, such as, language, loss of culture, loss of the diet, loss of the knowledge of how to grow these foods. And So what we started to see was that the elders were really invested in this. They started to get out there, which made them have a little bit more exercise because they were chasing after their youth and teaching them all this stuff. So they were able to get out there, and we started to see that the diabetes, we were able to get that under control. So with this, again, land is medicine, it was never so much true as in this project. We have to start this project back from scratch because of the fact that COVID happened. And so we had to put a stop to it at that point. So in conclusion, not only as a faculty member, I teach anthropology. So what I do as far as trying to bring culture back is not just this project that we were talking about as far as the elders teaching the youth, but also when I assign students, my college students assignments, I will actually have them partner up with an elder in their community and have that elder actually teach them about culture and things that they've learned so that we can keep this culture, this education of culture going throughout, even in college, right? Because that's so important. A lot of times we see, their midterms and their finals and things like that, they do get disconnected from their community, right? And it's really important for them to go back to that community, go back to the elders and learn from them. So this was a good opportunity, I felt, to actually connect them back with their culture, their community, and their elders. So also, I would like to thank the Rupert Costo Foundation there at, this is the gentleman that I said that gave up the land for the school. I'd like to thank the University Office of the President, and great thanks to Michelle Kells for inviting me and having me come over here and speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roseanne. It's a beautiful presentation. We thank you so much for making this journey today in the digital world and also embodied at the Albuquerque Biopark. I'd like to turn the session back to Janice for comments and questions, and then open the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Wow, what a great impact that you what you've done with the school, the communities, the youth, the elders, and I just really, I love these kinds of initiatives that are being presented to our communities. This is exactly what we need when we talk about land back, land is medicine, healing. All of those things actually do transcend from the land. And I know, Roseanne, you and I had a conversation last night. I get to meet up, and we talked a little bit about that and how the land definitely does heal. And so that healing, of course, looks different for everybody. Healing can be crying, it can be laughing, it could be just walking, and all these things that we sometimes don't realize that's healing. It's really healing us. So thank you so much, Roseanne, for your presentation and for sharing your insights and your experiences with your work. I'm going to open up the floor. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask your questions right now. Go ahead, go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. I apologize for the intermittent Wi-Fi, but we were able to piece together a lot of the content. I would really love to hear more about the role of spirituality and that relationship to land, Roseanne. You illustrate beautifully the consequences of a rupture in that relationship, that spiritual relationship to land. Can you talk a little bit more about what that healthy relationship that restores that sacred union between nature and culture?
Sure. Well, I think a lot of it, when we're talking about spirituality, not only are we talking about something that, people might look at as a traditional, religion, but it's also a state of mind, right? It's how do we respect the land? How do we respect, how do we honor, right? Our non-human family as well, which is animals and plants, but also use understanding where you're grounded. I mean, I was talking before how my grandfather was actually from a little village in Las Cruces called Tortugas. So when we're talking about spirituality, we would come back because of the feeling, right? And that's part of spirituality, that feeling coming back to where your ancestors once walked or are laid to rest. It makes a big difference. That's your connection. That's your spiritual self that's doing that. But also, when we give thanks and we give thanks to Creator, we look at the four directions, right? And what that means, and how we give thanks for everything that we have there. So that's kind of, it just touches bases, generalizing it a bit, but it's so much more complex than that.
If I could follow up, in our really wonderful, robust dinner conversation yesterday with Janice and your cousin, Jenny, discussed the relationship of the ancestral homeland in the Gila, and then how that extended into Isleta. Could you elaborate a little bit how those kinship ties and land relationships throughout this bioregion from the Gila and along the Rio Grande evolved over time, and those sanctuary places that the Pueblo Isleta provided Apaches who were in forced removal from the Gila?
Jenny is actually a lot more fluid in that than I am. As I understand it, it was very because of the situations and the events that happened and how they moved different tribes around, and trying to avoid capture or that type of thing. When we were talking about Isleta as being, or that Jenny was talking about it as being a haven, right? Someplace that they could actually be safe for a while before they moved on. I think she mentioned last night about having their babies there, so that it was a safe space, right? But again, she's a lot more, she knows a lot more better that type of information.
Thank you.
I have a question, Roseanne.
Sure.
This is just fascinating and exciting. I'm wondering about, and I don't know your involvement with the actual side on agriculture, but I know we've gotten to learn about some successful examples. What are some challenges in the logistics? What are some limiting factors to making a successful cultivation project, be it environmental or just having enough hands and investment in these projects?
One of the biggest challenges we have is the soil itself, because a lot of the tribes have actually been placed on reservations that are not that fertile, right? I mean, they have, the soil's not that great. Also, engineering for water to move the water towards that area. The one thing I was going to mention when I was talking earlier was the fact that as educators, we really have to understand that these students, Native students, are coming, as representatives of their community. So you have to understand that this community is behind them. So when you're talking about what are the challenges, well, when we actually train or educate someone who's going to go into engineering, that person's going to go back, and that's what they're doing, is they're going back to their community to help them, right, with their engineering. And how do we get this water or whatever it is, engineered to do these kinds of projects. We did we did go look or chose certain tribes because of the availability of resources that they had there, just to start a model. And then once we get that model going, we can, then share it with all the other, as many tribes as we can to get that going as well. One of our big concerns was that during COVID, there was a tribe that was so remote that it took them about an hour to 2 hours to get to, because they were, in quarantine. They only had like one person or, a handful of people that could go to the store to get them their food. So this is kind of the one thing that really gave us the support to say, yeah, we need to get this into all these communities, because had they had this, they wouldn't have been so bad off where they were looking for food, right? They could have grown it right then and there and not have, not be depending on others to go and get them food. So those would be the challenges. And then of course, that was the support that we needed to really promote this program.
Thank you, Roseanne.
One thing that I know that I was taught, because I do farm, I have a small farm here in Isleta Pueblo, and one thing that I was taught, like we were talking about, spirituality, is, like you said, acknowledging, but it's also that homage. And what I was taught was, our first crop, the best crop, we give that back to the land. That's something that we do, is whatever comes out first, we say our prayers, but we give it back to the land, and we take the second harvest. So I think those kinds of things too, being able to bring in the youth and really have them understand why we pray and why we give homage, helps them also with their connection. And so did you also see that in the communities that you worked with the elders and the youth, them really grasping, the traditional aspects, but also the spiritual aspects of who they are?
Yes, we do. And reciprocity is a big thing. And sometimes the youth don't understand exactly why they do it, but they do it nonetheless. I mean, even beading, when they do a beading, their first beading project, they give that away, right? As a matter of fact, I was gifted one, which I'm so honored that I got that, but it's reciprocity, giving it back. And so this is kind of the one thing that I'm really focused on as far as a grad student and doing my dissertation is exactly that, because, we don't just, for Native Americans, it's understood that this dissertation is not for for me to have my name known, right? This is to do good for communities, Native American communities. And if you talk to Native American students, like I kind of said, when you're teaching a Native American student, you're doing it for a community, because they're going to take that back to community. We need more doctors. If they go to medical school, they're taking that back to their community that needs doctors or nurses, engineers, whatever it is. You are teaching for that community, for the better of them. So this is kind of something that we need to understand, that in the end of our research, it has to be something that's going to benefit those communities.
Absolutely. And have you done any work with any of the seed, what is it called? Oh my God, I can't even talk right now. Seed rematriarch. Thank you. Have you done any work with that, with bringing, the seeds that belong to these tribes back into their communities and, growing those seeds?
Yes, we have a group that's called the Chia Cafe, and they've done a lot. Well, they have a lot of knowledge when it comes to that. And they do actually, whenever they come to any of our events at the school, they do give out those seeds for us to actually start working the land with, that it's traditional native food to those tribes. So there are a lot of projects that are going that are getting started with that kind of thing. Because again, if, a lot of the issues that are the medical issues or health issues are because of Western food, right? And that our bodies are not used to that food. We're the last ones that have been exposed to that food, Western food. So that's where a lot of the problems are happening. So yeah, going back to growing our, the traditional, gathering the seeds and being able to do those kind of projects are really, really important. And we do have a few groups that are out there that are focused on just that.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Michelle. Thank you.
I love the metaphor of growing seeds and seed rematriation as a metaphor for research. And we talked a little bit last night about how Indigenous research is different and the way we recognize the authorities of the community. Could you talk a little bit about how your research is different because of the Indigenous practices that you use?
Yeah, it's very different. And so it's different, but not any less value. And I always say that, it's legitimate. It's just different. It's a different approach. As a Native American and doing work with Native Americans, I use different language as far as what, aside from traditional academia language. For instance, instead of saying interview or interviewee, it is conversations, right? It's not, I don't put myself in the expert position, because I'm not. And I make it very clear when I do my work that the people who I am talking to are the experts. I am the student. I'm actually getting knowledge from them. And I do word my work as such. I don't use words like participant. It's more of a partner. And then also all this research, this data that I'm collecting does not belong to me. It actually belongs to the people who share that information with me, and it should stay there for them to manage it. So these are the different ways that research should be done, especially when you're doing research with a Native community, making sure that you relay the fact that there's a lot of respect, right? And then again, reciprocity. What are you giving for them? In my case, it's going to be a handbook that actually explains, for an anthropologist or anthropology department, explains how to develop relationships with Native communities. How do where are these Native people students position that they should be there helping make the decisions, if not making those decisions that has anything to do with Native topics on campus. So these are kind of the things that we have to keep in mind when we're doing research with Native communities, and to make sure that people understand that they are the experts, they're the knowledge keepers, and we are the students as researchers.
Thank you, Roseanne.
Very well said. Any other questions? Okay, well, I think the work that you're doing it's wonderful, and I love seeing that kind of efforts and initiatives that go into tribal communities. I think, it definitely brings us closer, and the strength that we all have to connect and, to really be there for each other. So thank you so much, Roseanne.
Roseanne, thank you. As we move into the going to the biopark we'll be having a ceremony. We'll be having a blessing. We'll be having land acknowledgement. It will be the first reading of a land acknowledgement of the Gila region ever done publicly. We're doing that today. We'll also welcoming the Son Jarocho musicians from the Chicano Studies Department, as well as the New Mexico Poets and the UNM Danza group. All of these are in reverence, respect, reciprocity, and relationship to our indigenous communities here in New Mexico. And those relationships of the Gila, as we were discussing, have ancestral ties across this entire region. It's just not the Gila, but it's all over the state and extend even into, as we were discussing, in your family ties as far as California and Nevada and Oklahoma. Janice, you have a little bit of insight too from your perspective of that relationship to the Gila. Could we talk maybe just as we wrap up about migration and relationship to land, even when we're leaving our ancestral homelands, how that is enduring for us?
Absolutely. I think, home is home. I mean, we don't forget it. Like Roseanne mentioned, they come here, they visit. And so, the migration of, even us as Pueblos, migrating from different sites to different sites, we don't forget those. And what keeps us connected really is they're in our prayers. We acknowledge the places that we've been. And I think that's really what continues to connect us to those places that we know that we no longer occupy, but we know that we were once there.
That's beautiful. The spirituality through prayer, that you're still connected. I want to thank everyone, and especially Roseanne, for the beautiful presentation, Janice for your hospitality and your guidance to this conversation and our digital talking circle. If you happen to be in Albuquerque or around, please join us today at the Albuquerque Biopark Botanical Gardens. We do have complimentary tickets, thanks to our many sponsors of these events. All of our presentations will be available by YouTube on our digital hub for the Ancestral Gila digital hub. And we have other events coming, so please look on our website. And you can always email me if you have any questions. A lot of this project is very grassroots, word of mouth, and we have people from Oklahoma that joined us today. Thank you all, and please join us for our next presentation, April 19th, with Dr. Jeff Shepard, Dr. Rachel Jackson, Cherokee from Oklahoma, and Dr. Priscilla Ibarra, a Chicana scholar of Latinx environmentalism. This has been an amazing presentation and a moment, and much gratitude to everyone. Thank you.